against their father's life. Gloucester, distressed, trusts Edmund to find out the truth. When the brothers meet together, Edmund advises Edgar to avoid Gloucester's presence. So, some things before we even start. You've been gone for 9 years. You haven't seen your dad. You come back. You give your dad a letter that says his legitimate son that he's known all this time is now somehow plotting against him. If you're Gloucester, what do you do? What's the first thing you do after you get this letter?
You panic?
Okay, first of all, you panic, right? Because someone's trying to kill you. Arush. Okay, you would probably go and confront your son and say, ha, is this true? Okay? I think most people would probably try to do that. For some reason, Gloucester takes it at face value, believes this son who he hasn't seen in 9 years until just recently, and now everything gets thrown into a tailspin. Okay, so I think I do need to also have an Edgar, because Edgar, you come in at the end of the scene and you just don't know what happened, but everything is basically a disaster for you. So I do need an Edgar at the end. Who wants to be Edgar in this scene? Thanks, David. Okay, so now we are ready to read.
Thou, nature, art my goddess. To the law my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in a plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me? For I am some 12 or 14 moonshines, leg what brother? Why bastard? Why for base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, and my shape as true. Honest madam's issue, why brand they use with baseness, bastardy, base, who is the lusty self of nature, take more compassion and first quality, then doth within a dull, stale, tired bed, go to the creating a whole tribe of flops. Got 12 Elvin asleep and awake, and wake. Well then, legitimate Edgar, I must have your land. Our father's love is to bastard Edmund as a legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. Well, my legitimate, if this letter speed and my innovation thrive, Edmund the base shall top legitimate. I grow prosper. Now God stand up for bastards.
Wow, okay, so let's pause there for 1 second. I just want to show you this so we can kind of work on it together a little bit. How do I analyze a quote? So we're going to use this as our template, these 22 lines. Okay, so when analyzing a quote, this is what we're looking for. The context. Okay, so who is the speaker? Who is being spoken to? What's happening at this point in the play? So this context here is Edmund speaking in a soliloquy, okay? At what point is happening? We know that the kingdoms have been divided. That's all we really know. And things are not, they're in an ambiguous state. Now, what's also important, and I think that Jeffrey did a good job in reading, is you have to understand that when we're reading a play, we have to apply tone to the play, to the characters' words. So what kind of tone, what is his attitude about being a bastard child?
He's like very bitter that his legitimate brother like has so much more privilege and like status and power than he does.
Great word. He's very bitter. Is there another tone word we can think of? I would say
Jealous?
Jealous, very good. Resentful even. Okay, knowing how he says something is just as important as what is said. Because if you read this with, let's say, a jovial tone, like legitimate Edgar, I must have your land, you're going to miss the meaning behind that. He's not saying it like this, right? He's cunning, he's conniving. There is some kind of plan. Legitimate Edgar, I must have your land. So it's all in the emphasis. We have to understand what tone the character is using, okay? And once you figure out the context and the subtext, the points of significance, this is what you're going to do for your test. You're going to be given a passage, and you're going to have to examine the quote for features such as how it forwards a plot, how it reveals a character, how it develops a theme. Are there any references to imagery? Is there any foreshadowing, pun, irony, contrast, oxymoron? What's there? Okay. And here is a list. Now, this is not an extensive list because there are hundreds of devices, literary, poetic, rhetorical, that you can use. But this is a list that exists probably in plays, novels, short stories, all of these. Okay. So does it provide background information? Does it establish a setting? Now, you don't have to on your test. I do not want you to list for me all 20 of these because not every device is going to apply to every passage. So if I were you, I'd be looking at 3 or 4 good ones. Okay? What is most significant here? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, reread those 22 lines, and then let's talk a little bit about some of these devices and what you think applies to this passage. Okay, so let's take like 5-10 minutes, and then we will discuss together. We'll basically analyze this passage together. What are the points of significance that you find most interesting? And we've already done the tone. How's everyone doing? We need a few more minutes. How about we talk a little bit about it so we can see what you came up with? Okay, so thank you for starting us off. So here we have, it's revenge and jealousy tone, since he says he wants to have his brother's lands. And he does say that his father loves him just as much as Edgar. And he does complain about the timeline, and the word legitimate doesn't make enough sense for him. That's very good to explain the context. I just want to clarify for everybody that there's a difference between telling me sort of what happens line by line in terms of the plot, like paraphrasing the quote, and then analyzing it. Okay? So keep in mind for your reader, me, your audience, English teacher, read the play more than you have, so you want to divide paraphrasing it for me, explaining what happened, and analyzing it. So you're absolutely right to say that you could say that there's a theme of revenge here, right, or a theme of jealousy. But let's talk a little bit about what else is revealed here. Okay, a lot of alliteration I see in line 10. Okay, so whether you want to call that alliteration, repetition, consonants, all of those things are accurate. Now let's talk about that with Tanya's first. A lot of words starting with B. I think it's just to show how mad and jealous he is. Okay, but let's talk about base, baseness, bastardy, base, base. Why does he keep repeating those words? Why those words? You're definitely onto something, but let's talk about this repetition or alliteration, whatever you want to call it. Why is he associating baseness and bastardy together? What does base mean? Good. Okay, excellent. So we have like basically here two things: repetition of the base, baseness, bastardy, base, base, and also repetition of legitimate, legitimate, legitimate. Okay, those two concepts, which are exactly in conflict with each other, right? They're juxtaposed to each other. So base also could be like your base desires. He is associating himself with baseness, meaning low, meaning dirty. He's associating himself with how society views him as low, dirty, dispossessed, unwanted. That's how he feels. And by repeating that, it's also, I think, causing him a lot of rage that he is associated with those things, because that's not how he wants to feel, right? And when he was referring to his brother, or even the word, as legitimate, you see that he is contrasting those, at how he wants to be that. So if we're going to talk about those two devices there, I think it's important that you always have to make a connection as to why is there. Okay, chat's blowing up here. Let me see what's going on. So we'll put a pin in alliteration for right now. Okay, Jeffrey, it looks like he wants to talk a little bit about character revelation. This is an important device. What is revealed about the character through their lines? So it reveals that he is envious. Good, that he's not being treated the same as Edgar. Okay, he's also envious because he thinks he is the only one getting mistreated, and that Edgar, take him out of the picture, will make him the legitimate son. Right, okay, great. So what does this reveal? It reveals that he is envious of his brother, and it also reveals that he wants to take revenge on him, or he wants to get even, right? He wants to take his brother out of this situation. So what would you say it's revealed about him? What other words can we use besides envious? What is revealed about this character right now? What did you learn from this that you didn't know yesterday? Okay, he's devious, cunning, bitter. Very good. Anything else?
Like I think he's a very just character. Like he sees the injustice within the society, and like I think that's the importance of the first line because he says, "Thou, nature, art my goddess, to thy law," and like he's invoking like nature, the natural, and then the supernatural, like with goddess, because like the laws of the real of like his real country are like they're very unjust, and like so all he has is nature and the supernatural.
Very good. Yeah, so he's saying like the man-made nature is what is disenfranchising me. But I was made just like everybody else was made, right? The natural way. So why am I being dispossessed by something that I had no control over? I think any one of us would be raging about this. Okay? Very good. Base means cacophony. Well, cacophony would be anything that has a harsh sound to it. So I don't know if that'd be the best device to use right now. Okay, so he's talking about how society associates base and bastard, where base is perceived as exactly how it sounds, low status, looked down upon. Good. Does base refer to the great chain of being as being a bastard? Okay, great connection from yesterday, Sarah. I would say that, yeah, if we look at the chain of being, that probably a bastard child would be very low down on the chain, even if you're the son of a noble person, right? You still don't have the status. So would you be at the same level as, let's say, where the criminals were, the devil? Probably not, but you would be down, you would be low. And if you aren't able to possess land or title or have any inheritance, how do you survive, right? So conflict is established between Edmund and society. Very good. Conflict is a device. Without conflict, you have no forwarding of the plot. So you could say that this conflict is revealed. It's Edmund against society, but it's also Edmund against his brother and Edmund against his dad. So Edmund versus everyone, essentially. Okay? And then you could even say, in addition to this, the conflict, that the plot is forwarded because now we know that there is some type of plan in place that he has to wreak havoc. Okay, so just Marco, so you know, the King Lear has not said any of this to Edmund. This is Edmund sort of like having, I guess, he's having an existential crisis. He's having a rage about how he feels in terms of his placement in society. Okay? And yes, by repeating those terms over and over, he's repeating, I think, ultimately his frustration with his status that he is ignored from society. Very good. He tries to isolate himself as much as he can. Would you say, Arush, that that is being revealed by his character, or is that revealed? Okay, so now it's not the king's treatment, it's Gloucester's treatment of his illegitimate son. So we see definitely the family dynamic and why Edgar is going to be dragged into this chaos. And since society treats him as an inferior, yes, so he is. I think he's self-reflective in some ways, but I think that he is just on a mission to make other people hurt the way that he hurts. That's my take on it. But he does it right now in a way that is lashing out that we kind of, I think, feel a little bit of sympathy him, but his actions become so outrageous that it's hard to feel sympathetic for him. Okay, so we've got some really good ideas here. We've got introduction to some themes in the play. We've got tone. Okay, we've had conflict, character revelation. We've had forwarding the plot. So those are 5 devices just right there. Now, one other thing I want to talk about, what type of words, what does this feelings of worth suggest? Okay, so if you want to work nothing into this, I think you have to wait. Because you could say on some level that he identifies himself as having nothing, or he will eventually have nothing because he will not be entitled to inheritance. So you're onto something. But when you see Edgar in Act 3, like he actually becomes nothing. So we're building on it. I don't know if it's a strong connection right now, but definitely as you get through, you see like the people who become nothing or who are nothing. This, you could say he has nothing right now. So there is that connection. Yes, you are right. What words are used, specific diction? Now, diction is just a fancy word for word choice. What words are used here that gave you the impression that he feels dispossessed, that he is filled with rage, that he wants to get revenge? What are those words? Can you pick some from the passage? Besides base, bastardy, and illegitimate. Okay, wonderful. Even if you wanted to refer to line 13, dull, stale, tired, even some of those words, I think that give an impact onto how he's feeling, right? Creating a whole tribe of fops, meaning fools. Okay, so sometimes looking specifically, I like that you went with the nature. You kind of found you could even say that nature is a symbol here, that he connects to things associated with nature because he is a natural human, right? But the way that he is treated is unnatural, and that actually makes him act unnaturally. Like there's no filial bonds that he feels with his father or his brother. He's willing to take them out. And I want you to keep in mind, I am not saying that this is right or okay at all, but Gloucester is acting, I guess, in the way that it would have been commonly practiced. Now, could he decide to give both of his children lands? I don't know. I don't know how the primogeniture would work for illegitimate children. I don't know if he'd be able to, if it was just legally he'd be dispossessed. I think that there were legal guidelines where he would not be allowed to own property. And that's not something that Gloucester could change. So this is like he's fighting the power. He's raging against the machine. He is completely angry. And the only people that he can really react to would be his father and his brother. Okay? So for the audience, how do you feel when reading this? And bored is not an option. That's not what you're supposed to feel. So what kind of feelings when you're reading this? Like, oh, happy, can't wait to see what happens next. It's going to be wonderful. They're going to go for a picnic and go adopt a dog. It's going to be a great day. Like, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Because that's the mood. What mood is created from reading this? Tension, very good. Yes, it's completely unfair, and I do agree with you. Very tense, relatable. Oh, geez. And I think that we're going to see that we have a feeling almost like something bad's going to happen, right? It's a little bit ominous, right? Yes, and anxious of what Edmund is going to do next. Okay, well, enough about this. This is just like a brief little practice. We'll do more suspense. Very good. We will do more quote analysis before the test, but this was just a good example that even from a few lines, the more we pick at it, the more we go line by line, that we can see more of the devices. Okay, it's like he wants us to feel bad for him, but the way he is approaching the situation is not good. Yes, that's kind of like a message for the whole play, right? The way that people approach things is not good. Okay, so after we have this big diatribe about nature and bastards and being legitimate, enter Gloucester. And he is totally oblivious to any plan or any scheming that Edmund is concocting. So I want you to know that he's completely oblivious to this. And he is just very upset and stressed out about all of this information about King Lear. Okay? So Gloucester, when you're ready.
Kent vanished thus, and France and Choler parted, and the king gone tonight prescribed his power, confined to exhibition, and all this done upon the gland. Edmund, how now? What's the news?
So please, your lordship, none.
Why so earnestly seek you put up that letter?
I know no news, my lord.
What paper were you reading?
Nothing, my lord.
No? What needed then that terrible dispatch of it into your pocket? The quality of nothing hath not such need to hide itself. Let's see. Come. If it be nothing, I shall not need spectacles.
Okay, so I want you to imagine. Now, this is how this has to play out in my mind. You know, Edmund is like, okay, he sees Edgar come in, right? And he's, Kent vanished. Francis, blah, 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 stressed. And he's reading, and then, oh! And tries to hide this letter, like it's so obvious, okay? And immediately we go to the letter. Now, letters are motifs in the play. There's a bunch of letters being sent back and forth from different people, obviously giving information. This is a time before, can you imagine, before social media, that you couldn't like update everybody on your thoughts and feelings right away? You had to write a letter, and you didn't even have mail. You had to have someone get on a horse and like write it somewhere. So all of these letters are going back and forth to different people, parts of the kingdom. They become important. They deliver information, but they're also used as, like, this letter is a red herring. Do you know what a red herring is? In like a classic murder mystery, a red herring is a clue to get everybody sort of off track. So in this way, this is a fake letter that he's made up, but I wanted you to notice on lines 31, and then again, if you look at 33, 35, nothing, my lord, but nothing is always something. So, and then ironically, and you'll find out later why it's ironic that Gloucester says it, the quality of nothing hath not such need to hide itself. Let's see, come, if it be nothing, I shall not need spectacles. Okay? So the idea of Gloucester seeing, needing spectacles, that's a whole thing I want you to remember for later. Okay, good. Edmund.
I beseech you, sir, pardon me. It is a letter from my brother that I have not all or read, and for so much as I pursed, I find it not fit for your overlooking.
Give me the letter, sir.
I shall offend, either to detain or give it. The contents, as in part I understand them, are to blame.
Let's see.
I hope for my brother's justification. He wrote this but as an essay or taste of my virtue.
This policy and reverence of age makes the world better to the best of our times, keeps our fortunes from us till our oldness cannot relish them. I begin to find an idle and fond bondage in the oppression of aged tyranny, who sways not as it hath power, but as it is suffered. Come to me, that of this I may speak more. If our father would sleep till I waked him, you should enjoy half his revenue forever, and live the beloved of your brother Edgar. Conspiracy! Sleep till I waked him, you should enjoy half his revenue. My son Edgar, had he hand to write this, a heart and brain to breed it in? When came you to this? Who brought it?
Okay, so what is the substance of the letter? It's obviously a forgery. This is not really from Edgar at all.
It's
What's the
basically, is it that Edmund is trying to frame Edgar of trying to kill Gloucester for the early fortune?
Yeah, there's like we're building to this here. So let's talk a little bit about what first. Let's go to the ideas that he's mentioning in the letter. This policy and reverence of age makes the world bitter to the best of our time, keeps our fortunes from us till our oldness cannot relish them.
Is he talking about how like the inheritance comes too late in their lives to enjoy?
That's right. So now we kind of get with the conspiracy. So what is being proposed by Edgar? Not really. What's being proposed here to Edmund?
So they want to kill Gloucester to get early inheritance.
Yeah, and basically he's like, hey, we'll work together and then like I'll share it with you. So won't this be a wonderful scenario? Okay, now I want you to look at Gloucester's reaction. Conspiracy. My son Edgar, how do you hand to write this? A heart and brain to breed it? When came you to this? Who brought it? All of these questions. Does he even think for a moment that it could be fake? No. So it begs the question, does he even know his true son at all? Also no. He doesn't know his legitimate son. He doesn't know his illegitimate son. He has no idea about his children and their thoughts and feelings towards him. That's a problem, right? Okay, so let's find out how Edmund is going to deal with this scenario.
Oh my bad. It was not brought me, my lord. There's the cunning of it. I found it thrown in at the casement of my closet.
Gloucester?
You know the character to be your brother's?
If the matter were good, my lord, I dare swear it were his. But in respect of that, I would fain think it were not.
We're on line 63.
Oh, it is his.
It is his hand, my lord, but I hope his heart is not in the contents.
Has he never before sounded you in this business?
Never, my lord, but I have heard of him of maintain it to be fit it that sons at perfect age, and fathers declined. The father should be as ward to the son, and the son manage his revenue.
Oh, villain, villain, his very opinion in the letter. Abhorred villain, unnatural, detested, brutish villain. Worse than brutish. Go, Sirrah, seek him. I'll apprehend him. Abominable villain. Where is he?
Okay, so I just want to make it clear how quickly he comes to assuming that this is Edgar's handwriting. Okay, so he asks Edmund, who he's not suspicious of at all, you know this character, meaning the handwriting, to be your brother's. And he says, I think the content like kind of sounds like him. And then Gloucester leaps to a conclusion and he says, it is his. But it's not, it's a forgery. So this parallels Lear quite obviously, that he really doesn't know his sons, just the way that Lear really doesn't know his daughter's intentions. Okay? So again, what does it come down to? The sons wanting to take the power and the money of the fathers. And how quickly it turned from geez, I should really talk to your brother about this, to he's a villain, he's abhorrent, unnatural, detested, I'll apprehend him, no, he's going to arrest him, probably have him killed, abominable villain. Where is he? Okay, poor guy's not even there. They have no idea. Okay. Okay, so did Edmund prepare this letter for Gloucester so that he may think Edgar is plotting to assassinate him while also revealing Edmund's true feelings regarding the inheritance system? I don't know if Edmund's intentions are to reveal to his father how unfair the system is. I think that's beyond him. But I think that it's very clear that he made this letter, made it seem like he found it, but it was to frame Edgar. So he was hoping that Gloucester, knowing that he doesn't know his son very well, would have Edgar arrested and eventually killed, and then boom, he could take the role of the legitimate son and inherit all of his lands. So he can depose his father eventually, and he gets rid of his brother. 2 birds, 1 stone. So it seems like the daughters and sons understand their fathers, but not the other way around. They absolutely know how they can manipulate them, for sure. Absolutely. Okay, so let's continue. Line 75 with Edmund.
I do not know well, my lord. If it shall please you to suspend your indignation against my brother till you can derive from him better testimony of his intent, you should run a certain course, where, if you violently proceed against him, mistaking his purpose, it will make a great gap in your own honor, and shake in pieces the heart of his obedience. I dare pawn down my life for him, that he held this to feel my affection to your honor, and to no other pretense of danger.
Think you so?
If your honor judge it me, it will take you where you shall hear us confer to this, and by an articular assurance have your satisfaction, and that without any further delay than this very evening.
He cannot be such a monster.
Or is not sure.
To his father, that so tenderly and entirely loves him, heaven and earth, Edmund, seek him out. Wind me into him, I pray you. Frame the business after your own wisdom. I would unstate myself to be in a due resolution.
I shall seek him, sir. Presently convey the business as I shall find means, and acquaint you withal.
These late eclipses in the sun and moon pretend no good to us. Though the wisdom of nature can reason it thus and thus, yet nature finds itself scourged by the sequent effects. Love cools, friendship falls off, brothers divide, in cities, mutinies, in countries, discord, in places, palaces, treason, and the bond crack twists son and father. This villain of mine comes under the prediction. There's son against father, the king falls from bias of nature. There's father against child. We have seen the best of our time, machinations, hollowness, treachery, and all ruinous disorders follow us disquietly into our graves. Find out this villain, Edmund. It shall lose thee nothing. Do it carefully, and the noble and true-hearted Kent banished. His offense, honesty, 'tis strange.
And he leaves. Okay, so essentially we know that Edmund is setting Edgar up, and they're going to try to set up a scenario where Gloucester will be able to hear this information for himself. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Gloucester's passage on line 98 to 111. You want to take a quick reread of that and tell me what you see. Why are these things important? Now, just so you know, he is very superstitious, Gloucester. Oh, Okay. Okay, nice interpretation. Good. I like that interpretation. If you've ever read any Shakespeare before, which I know you have, when you see like these signs in nature, right? The late eclipses in the sun and the moon portend no good to us. What does it mean to portend something? You got to know Shakespeare was all about the omens. What do omens usually tell
So
us?
it's a sign or a warning.
Okay, very good. They foreshadow bad events, right? So he's actually kind of talking about, his own experience in the microcosm of a situation, and in the macrocosm, look at what's happening with King Lear, right? We have father against child, king dividing kingdom, all of these bad things happening. And he also mentions at the end, and the noble and true-hearted Kent banished. His offense, honesty, like he's shocked by it. But what becomes even more ironic here is that Gloucester really can't discern between his two children who is the honest one, who is the good one, who has motives to be angry and who doesn't. And he's already assuming his son Edgar is in on this conspiracy. Absolutely, right? So kings are betrayed, fathers are betrayed, and the bonds are broken. Okay, so now he leaves, and Edmund is left to sort of, I think, gloat in his success from this plan that so easily emerged.
This is the excellent foppery of the world, that when we are sick in fortune, often the surface of our own behavior, we make guilty of our disasters the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if we were villains or necessity. Fools by heavenly compulsion, keeps, thieves, and traitors by spiritual predominance, drunkards, liars, and idolaters by enforced obedience or planetary influence, and all that we are evil in by divine thrusting on admirable invasion of whoremaster man to lay his goldish disposition to the charge of a star. My father compounded with my mother under the dragon's tail, and my nativity was under Ursa Major. So it follows that I am rough and lecherous, foot. I should have been that I am had a maidenless star in the ferment twinkled on by bastardizing Edgar.
Okay, so before Edgar enters, let's talk about this. What is Edmund saying about Gloucester's reaction to the signs and the bad omens? Well, first he says in the first line, this is the excellent foppery of the world. What is excellent foppery? Marvelous stupidity. Okay, that when we are sick in fortune, often the surfeit of our own behavior, we make guilty of our disasters, the sun, the moon, and the stars, as if we were villains on necessity, fools by heavenly compulsion, knaves, thieves, and treacherous by spherical predominance. What does he really mean by that, if we had to summarize it?
Is he saying like whenever like something bad happens in our lives, we tend to blame the fates and stuff, and like we're absolving ourselves of sin?
Absolutely. It's very convenient to blame fate when things are going bad, right? That's like a human compulsion. You have to blame something else instead of yourself. So really what we're also looking at here, yes, it's convenient to blame fate, but if we're looking at Edmund in a character that's like fate versus free will, he's a free will guy. He is going to take action. He's not going to sit back, obviously, and let fate just run its course. He says that he was conceived under the dragon's tail, right, Ursa Major, or that's when he was born, sorry, and that these things, they predominate, well, it says here in the margins, the constellation of the Great Bear, in which Mars is predominant, but shares influence with Venus, thus producing temperaments that are both warlike and lascivious. So this prepares us for that. Like, okay, so you have Mars, who's the god of war, and Venus, we know, like Aphrodite, the goddess of love. So he's got this combination of lasciviousness. What is that? What does that word mean? Warlike and lascivious. Let's pop up a Google definition in the chat. You all need to know. Right. So he's sort of ruled by his rage and also by sexual desire. So his combination together is going to make him very powerful and seductive, especially in his encounters with two other women that are also lascivious and power hungry. So it's an interesting combination that's going to lead to some juicy details in Act 4. Okay? So those are the two driving forces he is saying in his life. Okay, so as Edgar comes in, and he has no idea what's just transpired.
And Patty comes like the catastrophe of the old comedy. My cue is villainous mentality with a sign like Tom O. Bedlam. Oh, these eclipses do pretend these divisions. Fa sol la mi.
Okay, so let's just explain that a little bit. Okay, so here he says he's going to be an actor. The cue, this villainous melancholy. Melancholy is sadness with a sigh like Tom o' Bedlam. Go to the margin. Tom o' Bedlam. Tom was the mad beggar. It was the name given to lunatics, well, people with mental health problems that would be discharged from the Bethlehem Hospital for the insane. So that was an actual place, the Bethlehem Hospital. And when they would discharge people from hospital that had mental illness, they were homeless, destitute, nothings of society, and they called them Tom o' Bedlams. So he's saying that he's going to be like sort of part actor and, you know, sort of like this sad, wretched creature. And he also ends with Fa sol la mi. And in Elizabethan times, it has a few different references. So I did some research because I was not satisfied with the definition in the margin and assumed nonchalance. Well, it could be that. But when I looked into it a little bit more, in Elizabethan times, it meant the devil in the music. So I think he's relating here that there are plans for him, that the devil's in the details, that cunning is in his plans here with his brother, who's coming in and really has no idea what he's going to be bombarded with. So I want you to notice when his brother talks to him, there's going to be a lot of fast interchanges. Okay, it's going to shock and scare Edgar to the point where he doesn't really have the time to think about it. Okay, this is not clearly stated in the stage directions. We don't have any, but I'm just letting you know that when to sort of expect this. Okay. All right, let's carry on.
I am thinking, brother, of a prediction I read this other day. What should follow these eclipses? I promise you, the effects he writes of succeed unhappily, as of a naturalizedness between the child and the parent, death, birth, dissolutions of ancient immunities, divisions in state, menaces, and maledictions against king and nobles, needless dependencies, banishment of friends, disposition of cohorts, till breaches, and I know not what. When, when saw you my father last? spat you with him.
Spake?
Speak. Parted you in good terms, found you no displeasure in him by word nor cordance.
Countenance. Like your face. Countenance.
Bethink yourself wherein you may have offended him, and I might entreaty forbear his presence until some little time have qualified the heat of his displeasure, which in this instance so ragged in him that with the mischief of your person it was scarcely ally. That's my fear. I pray you have a continent forbearance till the speed of his rage goes slower, and as I say, retire with me to my lodging, where whence I will fitly bring you to hear my Lord speak. Pray ye, go. Here's my key. If you go stare abroad, go armed. Brother, I advise these to the best. I am no honest man. If there be any good meaning toward you, I have told you what I have seen and heard, but faintly nothing like the image and horror of it. Pray you away. I do serve you in business. I
Okay.
credited.
Sorry. Can I interrupt you just because I want Edgar to lead and then Edmund can have his last little soliloquy. Okay, so how does Edmund set him up? Go back to line 151. So he's like, hey brother, what's going on? They have a little nice conversation. So like, did you say something to dad to make him upset? Because he's basically instant so rageth in him that with all the mischief in your person would scarcely a lie. Okay, so it says it would hardly be satisfied by doing physical harm to you. So like he's raging and he like this is not good. And Edgar's kind of like shocked, like, well, someone did me wrong. That's what I fear. Yes, brother, right? Obviously, he's the one that did it. And he says, you better stay away from dad until he calms down. You can stay with me. If you do walk around, though, make sure you go armed, like with lots of weapons. Make sure that, you know, so imagine you're Gloucester and you see Edmund and you're armed. Like, what is that going to look like? That's not going to look, did I say Edmund? I meant Edgar. That's not going to look like a good scenario. So he's setting him up in that way. Okay, and even Edgar says, armed, brother? Like, what? Because he doesn't walk around with weapons. Okay, and that is Edmund's best advice. So, after Edgar leaves, now we have the last lines by Edmund.
I do serve you in this business, a credulous father and a brother Nova, whose nature is so far from doing harms that he suspects none, of whose foolish honesty my practice is right easy. I see the business. Let me, if not by birth, have land by wits. All with me's meet that I can fashion fit.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So he says, like, my poor brother is such an idiot. He's so foolishly honest. This is going to be easy for me to take advantage of him. And if it's not my birthright that will get me this power, I'm going to have lands by my wits. And I'll do anything I can do to make this happen, whatever it takes. Okay. So I have a suggestion. Let's read Act 1, Scene 3, and then I'm going to give you the remainder of the period to work on those scene questions, because I think we've covered a lot today, and I can't see most of you, but the ones I can see are starting to look like you're fading a little bit, okay? So, Act 1, Scene 3. Some time has elapsed. Lear is now staying with Goneril, as he had planned to do so in Scene 1, but Goneril is already dissatisfied with the arrangement. Not surprising. She gives new instructions to her servants. The short scene prepares us to see the major changes of Scene 4 and to understand Goneril's harshness. Okay, I just want to look in the chat if I missed something. So Edmund subtly nudging his brother into a feeling where he needs to anxiously watch out for his father and the other person plotting against him, while saying that he's on his side by informing him of this problem. Yes, so Edmund is the puppeteer, right? He's sort of creating the scene for all of them to fall into. Okay, very good. Now Oswald, we're not really gonna like him because he's kind of like a sneering little servant, and he's Goneril's right-hand man that she goes to. And we'll see interaction with him a little bit later, but he's not very pleasant, and we're going to find out the issues that exist in her castle right now. Okay, so I need someone to be Goneril. Can I have a Goneril, please?
I can read for Goneril.
Thank you. And I need an Oswald.
Miss, I can
Hi,
do it.
Oswald.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Say, why don't you, Jeffrey, thank you very much. You've done a wonderful job today. Say, why don't you take this role?
So for Oswald, you mean?
Yes, please.
All right. I take that.
Okay, great.
Did my father strike my gentleman for chiding of his fool?
Hey, madame.
By day and night, he wrongs me every hour. He flashes into one gross crime or other that sets us all at odds. I'll not endure it. His nights grow riotous, and himself upbraids us on every trifle. When he returns from hunting, I will not speak with him. Say I am sick. If you come slack of former services, you shall do well. The fault of it I'll answer.
He's coming, madame. I hear him.
Put on what weary negligence you please, you and your fellows. I'd have it come to question. If he distaste it, let him know to my sister, whose mind and mine I know, and that are one, not to be overruled, idle old man, that still would manage these authorities, that he hath given away. Now, by my life, old fools are babes again, and must be used with checks as flatteries, and when they are seen abused, remember what I have said.
Well, madame.
And let his knights have colder looks among you. What grows of it, no matter, advise your fellows so. I would breed from hence occasions, and I shall, that I may speak. I'll write straight to my sister, to hold my very course, prepare for dinner.
Okay, so in this very quick scene, what is Goneril revealing to us? Any ideas?
She really hates her dad.
Why does she hate him? What's becoming the problem?
Like in his madness, he's becoming a little bit power hungry because his knights are like they're doing what they want, and that's displeasing Goneril.
Well, let's talk about the knights. Okay, so you have 100 of them who you have to feed and entertain. And how do knights like to be entertained? Probably with a lot of alcohol and brothel-esque type entertainment. So it's getting rowdy and it's getting wild, and this is not what she signed up for at all. And of course the knights are there to protect him. He is taking liberties of being in her household, and quite honestly, she's had enough of it. So what does she tell Oswald and the rest of the servants to start doing?
Say that she's sick and that she doesn't want to meet him.
That's right. So anytime a king wants to see somebody, you go. Doesn't matter what's happening to you. Like, you go, right? Sick or not sick. So by her refusing to see her father, that's going to upset him, because you don't ever say no to a king. That's number one. She also tells him, if you come slack of former services, you shall do well. The fault of it I'll answer. So now she wants him to reduce his services. So, don't bring him food. Don't listen to him. Don't do what he wants you to do. If he asks for this, don't bring it to him. Okay? She says, put on what weary negligence you please, casual disobedience. Not that you'd be directly rude to the king, but she will allow it. So what do you think she's trying to do with these little subtle things here?
Like make oh, sorry.
Good. That's like the word I was thinking of too, is that she's undermining his power and authority because the king would not be used to be spoken to like this. But one thing we're all forgetting maybe is that he no longer is king, or he's forgetting this. He's expected to be treated like a king, but he's given up his power. So why? Right? And that becomes a problem. So yes, I think she's doing this to slowly push him out to Regan's castle. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys the rest of the period to work on those questions. If you want to get a head start on reading Gatsby, you can also do that. And we will pick up with Act 1, Scene 4 tomorrow. Okay?